الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. We're covering the chapters of nikah and talaq. Nikah we've covered, and rada', which is some of the ahkam pertaining to feeding, we've also covered, and expenditure and etc. we've covered. We have now for the past couple of lessons been covering the chapter of talaq, which is divorce, and we gave an introduction to that chapter, which is also available in our playlist if you like. It's on the YouTube, which is a very important introduction for the chapter of talaq. And we mentioned 5 points which are very, very serious points, what we can understand from talaq and how should we think about talaq when we do think of talaq, if someone thinks of talaq. Please do refer to that. And last week we were talking about, we're trying to understand what does Sharia mean by talaq, and how do we understand it? What is talaq? How does it work? How do we understand it? So when we look at talaq, we can look at it from different angles. On the one angle, if you look at it from when someone gives talaq, when someone says talaq, the amount of effect it has on the nikah and the marriage contract, that's one angle of looking at it. The amount of damage it does to the nikah contract, depending on what kind of wording is used, that's one way of looking at it. So that is called, when we look at it from this perspective, talaq can be raj'i or ba'in, because raj'i and ba'in are talking about how much of an impact, how much of damage has the talaq caused to the marriage nikah contract. Raj'i is such a talaq where the talaq is reversible, is revocable, so it's not as much of damage. But ba'in is more serious and severe, where you can't just revoke it, can't just reverse it unless you do a new nikah contract. So based on that, there's raj'i and ba'in, and within ba'in there's baynuna sughra and baynuna kubra. We spoke about this about 2 weeks ago. So that's one way of looking at talaq. How much damage does the talaq do to the marriage contract? باعتبار الأثر, according to, based upon the athar and the effects that we have, that the talaq has upon the marriage contract. That's one angle of looking at it, one window. We're going to look at it from 4 different windows. That's window number 1. How much damage does it have on the marriage contract? Window number 2, we look at it from the perspective of what time of the month, yes, of the month is the talaq given. Because if the talaq is given while the woman, i.e. the wife, while she is in her monthly menstrual cycle, then this can be talaq bid'i. So depending on what time the talaq is given, it can be 2 categories, sunni and bid'i. It could be according to the sunnah, or it could be bid'i, i.e. not according to the sunnah. So what that means is, so we're looking at window number 2, based upon what time of the month the talaq is issued. If someone issues talaq to his wife while his wife is on her monthly menstrual cycle, then that's considered to be bid'i, not sunni. If someone gives talaq to his wife, 2 talaqs or 3 talaqs in one go, not separating one, giving 2 or 3 talaqs in one go, then this is also bid'i, not sunni. If someone gives talaq to his wife while she is in her tuhur, not in her menstrual cycle, but they have had relationship, they have had intercourse, and then he gives talaq within this period of purity, within that month, then that's also considered to be bid'i. So what in opposition to bid'i is sunni. So what's sunni? What's the sunnah way of talaq? The sunnah way of talaq, should someone have to give talaq, if they ever do end up giving talaq, then it should only be given 1 talaq per tuhur, per month, while she is not in her menstrual cycle, and while there has been no consummation of marriage, i.e. there's been no relationship, sexual relationship between the man and the wife. 1 talaq per month, that's called talaq sunni. So now we looked at window number 1 was based on if the amount of damage the talaq does to the marriage contract. Raj'i, ba'in baynuna sughra, ba'in baynuna kubra. Window number 2, what time of the month was the talaq given? Sunni and bid'i. We've just spoken about that again. We've spoken about it before as well. Window number 3, we look at the talaq based on what kind of language is used, what kind of wording is used. Is the wording direct and clear? Or is the wording indirect or unclear? If the wording is direct and clear, for example, I divorce you, or anti taliq, I give talaq to you, directly using divorce specifically and explicitly, then when it's direct and clear talaq like this, it's called talaq sarih, direct and clear talaq. And when the talaq is given in indirect language, what does indirect mean? Indirect means that we need to know what he meant, i.e. what he said could mean talaq and it could mean something else as well. For example, I don't want to be with you anymore. I don't want you anymore. Leave the house, for example. But we need to understand what he meant by it. Not leave the house and go get shopping. So we need to ask, what did you mean, O Muhammad or Ahmed? What did you mean by I don't want you anymore? What did you mean by I don't want to be with you anymore? So when the meaning isn't clear, then we need to ask the intention. When we need to ask the intention, this is called talaq with kinaya. Kinaya is from kanna, is to hide, is to basically say something and mean something else. So kinaya is where we need to understand what the husband meant from his talaq. So now we're on window number 3, remember. We're trying to understand, we're looking at talaq based upon what language was used. Was it clear-cut, direct language, you were divorced, I divorce you, or I don't want you anymore? Was it sarih, clear, direct, or was it indirect and unclear? So that's another way of looking at talaq. Now come to today, window number 4. All of this we've covered before. Window number 4, we are going to look at talaq based upon when is the talaq, when does the effect of talaq come into play? Is the talaq being given immediately, which is called munjis, that the talaq is immediate, or is the talaq being added to, or is being basically conditioned to a future occurrence? So is the talaq munjis, i.e. right now, or is it mu'allaq, or is it attached to a future event, or is it mudaf? Mu'allaq and mudaf have certain similarities. We'll come to that in a moment. So the 4th window with which we're looking at talaq to understand what it is what kind of language was used in the sense that, does he mean immediate talaq or delayed? Because it is possible to give immediate talaq, of course. It is also possible to give a delayed talaq. What do you mean by delayed talaq? For example, someone says from the beginning of next month, you are no longer my wife, I divorce you. That's permissible. It's possible to do that. Or someone says that if, for example, if something happens in the future, for example, if I get diagnosed of cancer, for example, he says, then you are divorced. That's one way of saying it. He might say the other way around as well. But the point being is, you can indeed attach the talaq to a future event that may occur. It may be something that happens to me, i.e. or to the spouse, to the male spouse, to the husband, or something that happens to the wife, or something that even happens in nature. If he says that, for example, if next month there is a hurricane, right, then you are divorced. He shouldn't say it like this, but if he does, then talaq will still be done. So we're trying to understand talaq from the 4th window, which is the talaq effective immediately, or is it a delayed talaq? Based upon this, or on this 4th window, there are 3 titles, there are 3 words written. What are the 3 words? Number 1 is, munjiz, mudaf and mu'allaq. Munjiz means right now, so that's quite simple. Any talaq normally is munjiz. You're divorced, i.e. now. Mu'allaq means attached to something else, attached to another occurrence, something else that happens. That's called mu'allaq, attached to another occurrence. It could be an occurrence to do with me, or to do with the wife, or it could be an occurrence to do with somebody else or something in nature even. This is not the right way to give talaq. In fact, so many fuqaha and some fuqaha have said this way of talaq mu'allaq is not jaiz. Because you're conditioning it and you're predicating it on a future occurrence, and that creates a level of fear and discomfort in the marriage that's not required. It shouldn't be the way, in that way. And that's why even according to Qanun and the law of Egyptian law, if someone gives a conditional talaq, i.e. attached to a future occurrence, then at that time the husband needs to reissue the talaq, i.e. double confirm. So it's not like if just because, for example, he said, okay, if I don't get a promotion next year, then you're divorced. Then as soon as that promotion doesn't happen, the divorce occurs. No, they will come to him at that time again and say, do you still want to give the talaq or not? So the point being is, talaq mu'allaq is possible, but it's not preferred. When you attach the talaq to another future occurrence of yourself, of your wife, of somebody else, or something in nature. So talaq mu'allaq is when the talaq is attached to, hung on to something else, another incident. And then we have the last one, talaq mudaf. Mudaf is not mudaf also means attached, but it's not attached to another incident, something else happening. It's just attached to a time. It's got nothing to do with someone else doing something else, or you doing something else, or the wife doing something else. It's to do with mudaf, i.e. if a particular time in the future comes, then the talaq is done. So talaq mudaf is when it is attached to a future, Assalamu alaikum Shaykh, a future time. So we're looking at talaq from the fourth window. Okay, fourth window meaning, is the talaq being dispersed or initiated and executed immediately, or is it attached to a future occurrence, or is it attached to a future time without any occurrence? So the difference between mudaf and mu'allaq is quite similar. It sounds like it's quite similar, but the difference between them is that mudaf is just attached to a particular time. Just for example, next month, in the beginning of January, in the beginning of February the 25th, divorce is occurring. That's mudaf, just attached to a time. Mu'allaq is when you attach it to a particular incident. If you do this, if I do that, if somebody else does this, if this happens in nature. Does that make sense? We've said that mu'allaq, even though it's jaiz according to Jumhur, according to some fuqaha, you shouldn't do mu'allaq because this creates tension in the marriage. And you can understand why that is. Okay, so talaq, if it is to be done according to the sunnah way, if there is a need for doing talaq, then it should be done according to the sunnah way. And the way of sunnah is that it should be done, talaq should be given in clear words when she's not in her menstrual cycle, i.e. in her clean time, i.e. in her normal time of the month, and there has been no intercourse. And also, it should not be attached mu'allaq or mudaf, it should be clear and direct. And then the second talaq also should be in the following month in the same way. And the third one should also be in the same way, okay, if you were to give 3. You can end a marriage with just one divorce. You can end a marriage with just one divorce, one talaq. You can also end a marriage with 2 divorces, 2 talaqs. You can also end a marriage with 3 talaqs. If you want to end the marriage with 1 divorce, 1 talaq, then a person says, you are divorced. And then the iddah period, when the waiting time of 3 months, i.e. the 3 periods, go away, when the iddah finishes, then this talaq is now, after the iddah finishes, is not raj'i anymore. Even though initially, when you say if someone says to their wife, I divorce you once, if they say only once, right? With no, I divorce you once, then this talaq has occurred raj'i. It's revocable, it's reversible. But when you have not returned her to yourself and not resumed the marriage for the entire iddah period, after the waiting time is finished, then now this talaq becomes ba'in, it becomes clear, i.e. the marriage is now terminated. If you want to resume the marriage now, you can't, because the iddah time is finished. You can't just say, oh, let's carry on with marriage. You've got to do a new contract. You've got to do a new contract. But the fact that you've got to do a new contract to resume marriage shows that the marriage is disconnected, i.e. the marriage is ended, i.e., just like she can do a new contract with you, she can also do a new contract with somebody else. The point that I'm trying to drive home is that you can end a marriage with one talaq if it's ba'in. If it's raj'i, if it's revocable, reversible, then the marriage doesn't end because it's still connected, because it's revocable, reversible. But when the waiting time is finished, then it's become a long time, the decision's been made, and it becomes ba'in, i.e. the marriage is now officially ended. If you want to resume, if you want to carry on life with this wife, this ex-wife now in fact, then you got to do a new contract, because she's no longer your wife. That also means that she can do a new contract with somebody else other than yourself. So now if you want to reverse your wife to you, then you need to do it within the waiting time. You need to make that mind up. So I've said now, let me just say what I said again. You can end a marriage with talaq only one. You can also end it with two. But if you end your marriage with 3 talaqs, then it's finished. It's so serious that you cannot get married to this woman ever again until she gets married again to somebody else, and that marriage finishes through death or divorce, naturally. Not paid, not forced. Not paid, not forced. So the advice is that if somebody really wants to give talaq, give it in the Sunni way, and end the marriage with only one divorce, if you have to. Why? If you give 2 or 3, then you're basically running out of cards to play with. Not play with, but use your cards, your opportunities of resuming marriage with this woman is only limited to 3 talaqs. Once you give 1, then you've already used 1 up. Once you give 3, then it's finished. So you literally only have 2 opportunities, technically speaking. So you can end the marriage with 1 talaq, the marriage can finish, but some people are very hasty and they try to weaponize talaq. They think that giving the talaq 3 times is like using 3 bullets. Talaq, 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 as if it's some sort of a harm only to the wife. No, it's a harm to you as well, and to your family also, and to your children also. Just like talaq is effective on the woman, it's also effective to you. You're not just divorcing her, you're also divorcing yourself. Because after you do the divorce, what are you called? You're called a divorcee. It's not like she's just a divorcee, you're also a divorcee. Whether you divorce her or she divorces you, if the divorce happens, you're a divorcee. So the point being is, we've looked at, in order to understand talaq, from 4 different windows. First was, how much impact and damage does it do to the marriage contract? That's called raj'i, ba'in baynuna sughra, and ba'in baynuna kubra. Baynuna kubra is when you give 3 talaq. You can't go back again, unless she gets married again. Baynuna sughra is when you've given 2 talaqs, or not necessarily just 2 talaqs, but 2 severe talaqs, and the iddah has finished as well. The iddah has finished. In that time, you can revoke, you can't get, if it's within the iddah period, then you can revoke and reverse the talaq. But if it is at the end of the iddah, then you must, because there is a bit of a tricky issue here. There is a bit of confusion, but that's why we must say at the end of all of this, even though we've studied it, when it comes to individual cases, we have to speak to a local mufti or an imam when it comes to individual cases. If you are not sure as to what happened, speak to an imam. And if you're not sure what's happened, speak to an imam before you give the talaq. Most people, they give the talaq 1, 2, 3, talaq, 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 and then they come to the imam and say, Imam, save me. Imam's going to say, did you give talaqs 3 in one go? Did he say in one word? Did he say in three separate words? If you've said, he's going to give, you might not like what you hear.
There isn't a difference. Someone says, you divorce 3 times at once, but there is any wise. Some people, they do it, but they are in anger.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna come to this. So this is good. There are some new issues going to come up. It's going to say talaq of sakran, if talaq is given by a drunk person. Talaq of ghadban, talaq given by someone who's in extreme anger. Is it talaq or not? These are issues coming up. Last week we spoke about talaq, giving 3 talaqs with 1 word. Someone says to his wife, I give you 3 talaqs. I give you 3 talaqs. He doesn't say, I give you 1 talaq, 2 talaq, 3 talaq. Or he doesn't say, I give you 3 talaqs, like that, indicating. He just says, I give you 3 talaq. Just, he says 3, but in 1 word. We've understood that according to the Jamhara of Fuqaha, the 4 schools of law, if you say to your wife that I give you 3 talaqs, but using only 1 word, then it's still 3. But Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi and Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi, they had the opinion that if it is given 3 talaqs in 1 word, i.e. I give you 3 talaqs, then this is counted as 1. Now there's a very, very clear distinction to be made here. I've said giving 3 talaqs in one word. What does that mean? I give you 3 talaq. If someone says, I give you 1 talaq, 2 talaq, 3 talaq, then that's 3. That's not one word, that's 3 words. If someone says, I give you talaq, I give you talaq, I give you talaq, that's not one word, that's also 3 words. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about only in the case where someone says, I give you 3 talaq in one word, in one sentence. If someone says, I give you talaq, I give you talaq, I give you talaq, then that's not one sentence, that's 3 sentences. So that there is no debate about, that's 3. There's no debate about that. If someone says, I give you 1 talaq, 2 talaq, and 3 talaq, then there's no debate about that, that's 3. The only debate is when someone says, I give you 3 talaqs in one sentence. Have I made myself extremely clear about that? Because some people misunderstand. They think that 1, 2, and 3 is also in the same chapter as, I give you 3 talaqs in one sentence. There's a difference there, that needs to be remembered. Okay, so last week, like I said to Haji now, that we spoke, Haji Khalil, that we spoke about talaq, giving talaq 3 in one word. According to the Jumhur of the Fuqaha, it does occur 3. According to some, it doesn't. And in fact, Egyptian law, and this is based on, it talks about Egyptian law because it's written in Egypt. Egyptian law has taken the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah, even though it's outside of the 4 schools, because of the situation of the country, because of the situation of the public, because it would mean that there will be an excessive number of women that are divorced, and they're trying to save marriages basically as much as possible. And because it's a plausible fatwa, and it's a possible fatwa, they take it in order for necessity and to save marriages and to save people's lives and to make people's lives easy. So that's what they do. And generally the Egyptian Fatwa Council, the Daru al-Ifta al-Misriya, the Egyptian Fatwa Council, they usually incline towards ease. Whenever there is an issue, especially when it comes to family law, ahwal shakhsiyya, family law, they always try to make people's life easy. Why? Because family is very important. They try to save family, even if it is an opinion that's not so famous within the 4 schools of law, or even if it is a reliable opinion outside of the 4 schools of law, like we've seen, for example, Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi's opinion about that. Okay, so obviously this is for the muftis of that time and place to decide, not just general rules. Generally, it is 3 means 3 in one word even means 3. But if a particular circumstance, particular mufti, particular fatwa board, Sharia council says so, then we are allowed to use that. But again, like I said, with divorce, it's a bit complicated. If you do want to give a divorce, then you should, if you're thinking about separating, then you should speak to an imam that knows, or a mufti that knows, and then take advice before you actually execute. Okay, there are a few issues that we need to speak about today. We're kind of revising, as you can see, we're going back and forth because it's very, very important to be clear, because talaq is a very, nikah people don't study anyway. The rules of marriage people are quite unaware of, and they're even more unaware of talaq. And they are the most severest decisions in your life. There's no other decision that has more of an impact in your life than marriage and divorce. We can agree on that, right? You can buy a house, it's not going to be as severe impact as marriage or divorce. But when you buy a house, you do all of the studying. But when it comes to marriage, you don't do any studying. When it comes to divorce, you don't do any studying. You just go and do it. Go and give divorce. When it comes to, so this is the most severe, serious decision in your life. We need to study, understand exactly how it works. We need to dissect it, really know what we're talking about, what we're doing before we actually execute or do it. This is also from the demands of our Sharia, that you shouldn't do something you don't know. We should know the ahkam of Sharia that we are trying to practice, or that is pertaining and relevant to us. So we've understood now that the 4th window through which we're trying to understand talaq is called based upon when it's executed. Is it now or delayed? If it's now, it's called munjiz. If it's attached to a future incident occurring, it's called mu'allaq. If it's attached to a future time, not incident, it's called mudaf. All of these talaqs are jaiz, they do work. Even though we've said mu'allaq, some fuqaha have said we shouldn't do it because it's not good to be under, the marriage shouldn't be under that kind of constant pressure and tension. Okay, and so if talaq is to occur, it should be according to the Sunni and the Sunnah way. Okay, there are some conditions on how to make an attached talaq. We don't need to go into all of that because hopefully no one gives talaq in the first place, inshallah. And that solves the issue. Let me see what else. Now let me do a quick test. Let's see how good people's memories are. we've said that we're going to look at talaq in how many different windows? Four. The first window, what was it based on? That was the second window. Okay, khalas. Okay, let's say with different windows. One of the windows was Sunni and what's the opposite of Sunni? No, Sunni and Bid'i. Yeah, of course. Sunnah and Bid'ah is opposition, yeah? So, according to Sunni and Bid'i, what's Sunni? What does Sunni mean? So, anyone can jump in. According to Sunnah. And how would a talaq be according to Sunnah? To be outside of menstruation period, once a month and not two in a month. Excellent. And also, there's one more condition. There should be, in that time of purity, there should be no intercourse. So 3 conditions per se, okay? Where it should be outside of the period, it should be one at a time, and it should be in a tuhur. So the opposite of menstruation, the opposite of the word for menstruation, let me say in Arabic. The word of menstruation in Arabic is called hayd, and the opposite is tuhur. So instead of saying pure time, we say tuhur, so it's easier, one word, tuhur. So to give one talaq per tuhur, in a tuhur there's been no intercourse in, and that it should not be in hayd. That's Sunni, and the opposite is Bid'i. Okay, what's another window? Sorry? Say that again? Raj'i and Ba'in. Okay, exactly. And what's the title of that window? The effects of the divorce on the marriage contract. Okay, so it could be Raj'i. Raj'i means what? Revocable, reversible. Excellent. And Ba'in means irrevocable. It's become clear. If it is a talaq raj'i, how do you resume marriage? Just say, okay, let's carry on. Or even if there is exchange of emotions, like if there's a kiss, or if there's intercourse, all of this stuff is basically automatically means you've resumed marriage. But if the talaq becomes ba'in, how does the marriage resume?
You have to wait for another man to marry her and then they divorce.
No. That's only in Baynuna Kubra. That's only if it's 3 divorces. Yes. So if it's ba'in Baynuna Kubra, you're right. If it's 3 talaqs, then and someone else has to marry. But if it's 1 or 2 talaqs, then you can do a new contract and carry on life with her. Okay. So that's talaq based upon the impact it has on the marriage contract. What's another window? The wording. What about the wording?
It's indirect to direct.
Is it direct or is it excellent? So if it's sarih or is it kinaya? That's another window. What's the 4th window? The one we just studied today. Yes. So the thing, the time of execution, is it now or later? Time of execution, is it now or later? If it's now, then it's munjiz. If it's attached to a future incident, then it's mu'allaq. And if it's attached to a future time, then it's called mudaf. Okay, that's all very clear. Excellent. So that's good. Now we're just going to cover 2 small issues, and then we'll end today's lesson. First of all, is talaq by writing jaiz? If someone texts their wife saying, I divorce you, or if emails her, or writes a letter to her, says, I divorce you, is that jaiz? Answer is yes.
Is it?
Yes, no. Is yes. Because kitaba basically, as the condition is, as long as it's clear writing. If it's clear writing and we know who is the sender, who is it sent to, all of this is confirmed, and the words are direct, of clarity, of the conditions are met, then the talaq is done. Talaq is done. Okay? So talaq with writing is jaiz. Whether the person can speak or not speak is irrelevant. You might say, well, you could have said it verbally. They can say, well, I could have also said it in writing. Both are jaiz and both are within the rights. Just like if a woman wanted to seek a talaq and khula', they can say to their husband, I want a khula', or can write to him saying, I want a khula', or write to the Sharia court and say, I want a khula', and this is my husband and I wanted to separate the marriage, and then they'll obviously take the steps forward like that. So writing and speaking are interchangeable, even though speaking is the asl and writing is the far', but both are jaiz. Okay, another one is talaq with indication, with sign language. Is it allowed? Talaq with sign language, not speaking the word and not writing it as well. It's jaiz only for those who can't speak. Talaq with sign language, in sign language you might have a way of saying like that, for example. Khalas. I don't know what the sign language is. But point being is, talaq with ishara, it's called talaq bil ishara. Talaq with sign language or symbolism or indication is jaiz only for the one who can't speak. If you can speak, but then you do sign language, then it's not valid. So talaq with sign language is only jaiz for the person who can't speak. According to the Ahnaf, and can't write also. If you can write, then you should write, I divorce you. If you can write and then you still choose to do ishara, then you should write. If you don't write, then talaq is not valid. But the Jamhur are saying that talaq with ishara, with indication with sign language for the person that can't speak, is jaiz. Okay? So talaq with writing is jaiz without any questions. As long as the writing is clear, we know who's sending it, to whom it's sent, and it's all very clear, then talaq is jaiz with writing. If the talaq in writing is not clear, we don't know who is sending to, what's the writing even saying? Maybe the water's damaged it, all of this stuff, then it's not, the talaq is not done. Do you get it? Because the writing becomes like his pronunciation. If halfway through him saying, and he chokes, then talaq is not done. Because it's still in his mind. Do you get it? It has to be established in writing or in verbal pronunciation. In writing is jaiz as long as it's clear. With ishara is also jaiz for the person, I would say sign language for the person who can't speak. No, exactly. Right. There's one more thing. What if someone combines sign language with verbal pronunciation? If they say, I give you talaq.
Once.
Like that. What's it? I give you talaq. Like that.
Still count, wouldn't it?
That would it still count? That's the question. The answer is yes. Because the Prophet ﷺ in his Sunnah has shown us that you can indeed indicate number with sign language, with ishara. He said, Ash-shahru hakadha. He said the month days can be like this, 28 days or 29. He showed it with his fingers. So this is from the Sunnah, that this is an acceptable form of communication. Okay, so if you say, I give you talaq like this, and you show 3, then it's done. So he's combined verbal pronunciation with sign language. He hasn't just said, because we don't know what you're talking about then. Okay, so sign language is, if the entire divorce is in sign language, that's only jaiz for the person who can't speak. Writing is jaiz, whether you can speak or not speak. And if you combine the number with indication and pronounce the talaq in verbal pronunciation, then that's also allowed and permitted. Right, I think we've done well today, and I think that's quite clear. There is a next section which talks about the rules. So now that we've understood what talaq actually is, talaq is the separation of a marriage contract between a husband and a wife. How does talaq? We've looked at talaq from 4 different windows. We've said that talaq has got certain. We've given an introduction to it. Now that we've understood what talaq is, and now the kitab is going to say what are the conditions. Who can actually give talaq? He hasn't told us who can give talaq. He's trying to explain to us first what is talaq. Because most people go and give talaq and then try to understand what is talaq. What have I just done? I don't know what I've done. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I don't know what I just done. I was too angry. I don't know what I was talking about. Okay, so now he's going to talk about what are the conditions of talaq. Namely, there are simple 3 rules, 3 conditions. That the person who's giving the talaq has to be baligh, of course, puberty. Aqil, has to be in a state of mental awareness. And also mukhtar, by choice. If someone is forced to give talaq, coerced to give talaq, then this is not considered talaq except for عند الأحناف. Except for عند الأحناف. If someone is forced to give talaq and coerced to give talaq, then this is not talaq except for some ulama. Let's leave it at some ulama for now, okay? Because I don't want to get into the details of it now. So the point being is, if someone is to give a talaq, then they have to be baligh. A young child can't go around giving talaq. An aqil person, someone's lost their mind. They become mentally unaware. They've gone mad. Naam, ahmaq. Okay, or majnoon we say, majnoon. Okay. Because ahmaq, I think in from the Arabic that I know, they say ahmaq, they say like someone stupid. Yeah. So majnoon. The one who's like, he's got a bit of some sort of it's like mentally, we don't say crazy because these are negative terms, because mental health is a serious issue. Someone who's mentally not able to make their decisions, that person goes and gives talaq, then that's not jaiz. But if it's aqil, someone is fully calculated, aware in their consciousness, then their talaq is jaiz. Mukhtar, and also by choice, not forced or not coerced. These are all important. These are the conditions of giving talaq. We'll come to also what are the conditions of talaq, the one that's receiving the talaq. What are the conditions of the one that's receiving the talaq? Okay, but of course it goes without saying that from the conditions of the one who's receiving talaq is that the marriage is still standing, that they're married to the person. That goes without saying. But inshallah we'll expound and explore that more next time. I'm trying to take it slowly, part by part, so you understand it very clearly, inshallah. There's quite a lot of repetition, I know that, but that's fine. It's okay, as long as you understand it very clearly, inshallah. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, that's fine. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.